So I just saw episode 1 of season 3 of One Punch Man, and safe to say, it's very concerning. Now, I understand that this episode is a bit of a slow burn. It's just a lot of, talking. It's a very talk-heavy episode. It's not supposed to have a lot of action scenes or anything like that. But I do also think that this episode is going to be a big indicator for what's to come in the animation industry. It's something that I'll discuss in a little bit. Now, I'm going to be going into some spoilers. So if you have not watched episode 1 of One Punch Man season 3, I would suggest you do so before you watch this video, because I'm going to go into some discussions about the plot itself of episode 1. So if you have not watched it, obviously, make sure you watch it before you do. Spoiler alert. There you go. So just to give you a little quick rundown at what, season 3, episode 1 had for One Punch Man is pretty much not a lot of anything. It was just a lot of talking, a lot of, preparation, just a lot of exposition about what's about to happen. Obviously, we're into the big climax of, the Hero Association versus the Monster Association getting ready for battle. And, obviously, it's a battle for the sake of the world. And so we're starting to prepare this. Obviously, this first episode is going to be a lot of talking. It's going to be a lot of prep. And we start to see the problems with the animations already. There's just a lot of still frames, a lot of still images. The only thing that really moves is just the mouth flaps, but that's something that is expected at this point, obviously. It would be more shocking if they just had no lip flaps at all, but obviously that's not going to happen. Obviously they need to have some level of lip flaps. But it's the fact that, the only thing that moves is the lip flaps, right? And it's just the entire, setting of the room like that. It's just basically akin to me just standing right here. All right, so this is the animation of One Punch Man. I'm here moving my arm. Just know I'm here talking to you. I'm very serious. You're going to talk to me or I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you right now. This is the level of animation that JC staff is implementing into One Punch Man Season 3. And to be honest, One Punch Man is an IP that I feel like deserves a heck of a lot of respect. That's an IP that I think, for what it's worth, is the biggest IP. Not just here, not just obviously in Japan, obviously. I don't know how much it sells in its manga sales or anything like that. I have to kind of look into that as well. I could be pretty safe in assuming that it's a pretty big seller. But here in the US, it's massive. Obviously, people always like to compare Saitama with the strength and stuff like that. Obviously, it's a big conversation when it comes to, power scalers and this and that, right? It's even featured in games like Fortnite. I believe he was also in PUBG, I think. He might have been in that, but safe to say One Punch Man is a pretty big name all around, right? So you'd think for a big name like One Punch Man, you'd expect that the level of respect that an animation studio, or at least the time and dedication that an animation studio would like to give an IP like this, would be given, with the utmost respect and the utmost time. But it seems like that's not going to be the case for this season. Instead, we're dealt with a season that could potentially be one of the worst seasons of this year. And that's not really easy to say. Obviously One Punch Man is a really good show. If anything, it's a really good, story, great characters, great, great action, for what it's worth. But it's just a shame that it's looking like it's fallen into the path of this animation industry, just going into a very dark turn into its practices. Because I think what this show is gonna do is something that have concerns about for the future of the animation industry, not just in Japan but also here in the US. So what exactly am I talking about? Now, the reason I'm wearing this shirt, obviously the blue lock, obviously it's a prime example as to why I think this is starting to become a trend. So what I'm talking about is having a show as big as, say, a Blue Lock, as big as One Punch Man, here in the US as big as Invincible, right? They start off rough with their animation. Obviously the big talking point in a lot of people's conversation during Invincible Season 3 was the animation. And it's not like it's, unique to Season 3. Obviously Season 1 and 2 have had some of their animation woes and stuff like that. Season 1 animation was fine, Season 2 animation was, it was all right. Obviously during the big moments, it's going to show, right? But in Season 3, it became even more glaring. It became even more apparent that the animation was just not taken care of properly, right? And it wasn't until the final episode that we started to, get to see some of the bigger movements. We start to see, the big fights. having some of the most like fluid movement and having the, actual frames and this and that, right? Obviously, it's a big episode. You would expect that, right? Blue Lock season 2 had that same issue. They had a really rough start with their first half of the season where you just see slideshows, almost like transitions, which is insane to me, like slideshow transitions. It's crazy to me. And just PNGs moving and this and that, right? And it's kind of a bad thing to look at that and then be like, well, at least they had, the final episode, that final goal. Man, that animation was awesome, right? But it's kind of concerning that One Punch Man might fall in that same direction where it seems that they're going to go into this direction of saving the best for last. But right now, we don't have to focus so much budget into the first couple of episodes, right? It's only going to be saved for the climax when, maybe the big fight will happen. And now all of a sudden we have to actually lock in, right? And look, I'm not against the idea of the climax being the better animated portion of an entire season. Obviously, it's the climax of the show. Your animation must be pretty much on par, or at the very least, it's going to be greater at that, climax moment, because obviously it's the best moment of the show, and that's where your quality is going to shine the most, right? But I think the level of consistency of an animation shouldn't just be a low bar, it shouldn't be a low, bar to maintain that consistency, right? If you're talking about big IPs like One Punch Man, like Blue Lock, or like Invincible, you have to have a standard of animation that is kind of like high up there for people to respect it at least, or people to just be like, okay, well, yeah, it looks good and this and that, and there's plenty of movement, because then at that point people don't really notice about it, and then when the big moment hits, it still hits, right? But the thing is that for One Punch Man, especially right now in episode 1, it's starting to become more glaringly obvious that that's not going to be the case. If anything, the bar for animating actual movements during conversations and stuff like that has been set very, very low to the point that it's noticeable. And people are going to be talking about this probably for next week if it continues, the week after when it continues. And then there's going to be some slight movement, be like, oh, okay, well, there's some progress, episode 6 and 7. Oh, okay, well, there's a bit of movement now. 8 or 9. Okay, now we're moving now we're going crazy. And then 10 and 12 are like the best episodes of the year for some reason, right? But it's weird because you talk about the final episodes as if it's indicative of the entire season when it's actually not. I still have gripes about season 2 of Blue Lock because a lot of the goals that were scored during the training arc, or at least during that training arc during that second season leading up to the U20 match, I felt like all those goals would have been so much more better looking if they actually put a lot of movement into it. Shido's goal, Isagi's goal, It's a lot of those moments where you look at it and you're like, but man, like that level of animation that we saw in the later parts of Blue Lock season 2, how come we couldn't have those for those goals, And they're crucial goals because obviously, or they're crucial moments as well. It's not like, oh, that match was insignificant. It's just a training arc, but it shows development. That's the thing, It shows, a progress. It's like a progress bar, It's like showing you that they're making progress and stuff like that, but you want to feel invested into that instead of having to make a joke about how weird the animation looks and all that stuff, right? And it's kind of weird that we're going into that same direction with One Punch Man. It's like, oh, well, the final episode is going to be super good, but then we just made fun of the entire animation throughout the first half. So it's like, are you trying to balance something out or something? I don't understand. So it seems that One Punch Man is going into that direction as well, and I don't like it. And I hope animation studios don't do the same thing like that, because I think even like shows like The Beginning After the End, by no means that show should have had a second season, considering how woeful it was at the start. Obviously throughout the season, it only had a slight movements at the end and stuff like that, but obviously it didn't do much. And yet now they're having a season 2. It was just announced, and of course the first thing that people comment during the in the trailer and stuff like that is just like, oh, are we finally going to get movement? Are we finally going to look good? Because The Beginning After the End is one of the most popular manhwas that exists right now, almost on that same level as, if you had like God of High School at the start, if you had, what's another popular manhwa, Solo Leveling and this and that, right? It will be on the upper echelon of like people that glazy, but now all that praise and stuff like that, it's only going to get thrown down the river if the anime doesn't actually like provide what it's deserved, right? And so One Punch Man is starting to fall into that same pattern. So in the end, what do I think about One Punch Man and where it's going? It's kind of sad to say, honestly. I really do feel bad for a lot of the One Punch Man fans. They truly deserve more. And honestly, this IP truly deserves a heck of a lot more. It deserves a lot for what it's brought onto the anime scene in general. You know, it should be on that same level as JJK. It should be on that same level as, you know, My Hero Academia at the very least, you know, because My Hero right now is going into the final season, and you can already see that they're implementing plenty of action scenes and stuff like that. Like literally this first episode of My Hero was good. It was really, really good. I've been enjoying it. I haven't seen the recent episode of My Hero, or the second episode of the final season, so I'm going to get to watch that in a sec. But it's safe to say that My Hero is going into the proper direction, you know, actually going to end up finishing it strong. And of course, the final fight that will happen soon, it's going to be the most intense, the most coolest looking fight we'll probably see in a while, you know, almost movie quality. But then again, you know, the movie quality of My Hero, it's always going to be top notch for some reason, because they always seem to lock in with that movie budget, you know. But regardless, yeah, it's just not looking good for One Punch Man right now, and hopefully it does get better. I do hope that at the very least it gets better, but I hope it gets better soon, not episode 7, not episode 8, when most people would already be like, you know, they were getting upset about the animation and all that stuff. You know, it has to be very soon. It has to show that if they have some level of dedication for this IP that has brought, you know, so much success in the anime industry, I think it deserves a heck of a lot more. And JC staff either should have had more time to develop this. They could have delayed it. They could have just taken a lot of time to make fixes and stuff like that, or just not do it at all. You know, at the very least, at this point, either don't do it at all, give it to another studio, or at the very least, put your time into it. Put a lot of time into this show, because it's been 6 years. All right, it's been 6 years since season 2 ended, and for what it's worth, in those 6 years, you could have been working on the show and making a huge amount of, you know, like animation improvements and this and that, right? You've probably been working on this season 2 and just been slacking off. You've been working these past 6 years and just been slacking off. But I know that's not how it works, really. It probably only started production like last year or two, and now it's looking like it's going to be like this. You know, the art looks good. The art looks great, but there's nothing to move there. The art is only as good as it looks when it's on a still frame. I feel like I get the same amount of experience if I just like literally screenshot the episode and just watch it like if I'm just scrolling down my gallery and looking at it like, I see. Well, just read the manga, you know. But with that being said, that's pretty much my thoughts on One Punch Man season 3, episode 1. Let me know what you guys think of One Punch Man season 3. Do you think the animation will get better? Would it get worse? Are we about to witness probably one of the biggest collapses in the anime industry as it stands, you know? Or maybe it could be, you know, maybe it could be Berserk or Fist of the North Star, whatever that CG monstrosity is, you know? It's such a sad thing, man. It's honestly such a sad state of affairs. Anyways, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. See you later. See ya.